With that, I think it's a great pleasure now for me. I'm very excited to introduce our panel that's with us. They're going to lead us in conversation today. And I'm going to start with the Honourable Minister of Trade and Industry here in Rwanda, the Honourable Mr. Francois Kanimba. Thank you very much indeed, sir, for joining us, and welcome. We look forward, as a policymaker, to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much, sir. Next to you, we have the Honourable Ms. Fatima Haram Aysel, who's the Commissioner for Trade and Industry at the African Union. So a Pan-African view. We certainly look forward to your guidance in terms of what's happening across the continent. We'd like to say very warm welcome to His Excellency Ambassador Vidya Bhushan Soni, Chairman, Overseas Infrastructure Alliance, India, and Senior Member, Confederation of India Industry. Thank you very much indeed, sir. We look forward to the role that chambers and business associations and groupings can contribute to this conversation. Here we have Ms. Annabelle Gonzalez, Senior Trade and Competitiveness Director, the World Bank. Thank you very much indeed. And these are the institutions that I was talking about that also have a role to play. Next to you is somebody that I've had the pleasure to work with before, Mr. Ashish Thakur, who is the founder and managing director of the Mara Group and Mara Foundation. And we look forward to, and what's great about him, and I apologize to the other people who've come from far and wide, but I really love to brag and boast about successes on the continent. And I think Ashish represents the best of what African entrepreneurs can do. So we look forward to hearing about your journey. Ashish, thank you very much for joining us. And Ms. Helen Hyde, thank you very much indeed. She's the CEO of Made in Africa Initiative, a woman that's doing a lot of great things on the continent, has come from far, but is helping build this continent in a very special way. Thank you very much. We look forward to hearing your experiences, not just here in Rwanda, but other parts of the continent as well. All right, so that's our panel, and the challenge is there. This particular conversation is themed Unlocking SME Competitiveness for Diversification. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to ask our panelists one question each just to set us up. After that, I'm going to invite you to raise your hand, and let's get through as many questions as we can and just see where this conversation takes us. So, if I could start with you, Honourable Minister, your question, I guess Rwanda has been enjoying quite a significant amount of progress, and the recognition we saw in the papers already, your competitiveness index ranking going up, and Rwanda's exports remain largely commodity-based though, and I guess that this becomes one of your challenges. And I wonder, what steps are you taking to support particularly SMEs improve their competitiveness and to help them diversify as well, with a view to enabling SMEs supply higher added value products and services to international markets. So how do we get them a step higher to the traditional commodity-based kind of environment that and primary producer level that Africa is typically best known for?
To be more than 70% of the Rwandan export base a few years back. New products which mainly include exports of manufactured products in regional countries, but also diversifying our exports in other opportunities, particularly in the horticulture sector, are now taking the lead and represent today more than 50% of our exports. I think this briefly, that's what I can say, how all these reforms are positively impacting on the Rwanda external trade, and the number of exporters. The number of exporters, we have also trying to measure that over time. The number of exporters has been increasing in the last 5 years by 30% on an annual basis. And the new exporters are mainly these small and medium enterprises, which are taking advantage of the opportunity through the regional integration. And lastly, to conclude, Mr. Moderator, apart from this reform agenda, the government of Rwanda is implementing a comprehensive program to support SMEs. to support SMEs. It's a comprehensive program which includes the establishment of a business development fund, which is going to address all the key issues to support the startups, but also which is going to facilitate the establishment of technology centers for the SME clusters. We are setting up a comprehensive trade logistics infrastructure. Actually, Rwanda is still known as a landlocked country, but we are making it a land-linked country through a comprehensive trade logistics strategy to take advantage of the big market surrounding this country through trade facilitation. Thanks also, we are now engaged with ITC to develop a specific program to support SMEs in key areas where we think the country has a huge potential. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much indeed, Minister Kanimba. And I think that what is quite clear is that when government sets up the right policies, when government intervenes and does the right things, you get the results. And I think your rankings are proof of that. And I'm going to turn to you now, Commissioner Assel, and I'm saying that there are 54 children in the African Union. Rwanda is the good child. However, perhaps not representative of the rest of the story. And when a good child is behaving, you can almost ignore the child, will carry on and get the thing done. But you've got other children who need your help. And I'm just wondering, what is it that the African Union is doing as a body to help the other children become like the good child, Rwanda, going forward? How can they also go up the rankings? What are you doing to help them be export-driven, diversify? What sort of programs do you have at the African Union? Or do you just sit, have good conversation, and just hope that your children survive?
The other one is a high cost of production. Production is very important, and to my knowledge, and that's what I preach, I think that the prerequisites for trade is really to produce. We need to produce in order for us to create the employment needed. The market information is also very important. The standards are very, very important. Yesterday I was talking to Pascal Lamy, and what he was telling me is, and actually I agree, really now, the key factor to access the market is really the standard. It's really not anymore accessing the market, but really the type of produce you produce, the type of specification, the standard, the SPS that you need to ensure in order to penetrate any market. The issue of NTBs, a non-trade barrier, which the minister talked about, and I think that that's also very important for us. The small size of our market. As you're aware, most of our countries, out of the 54s, most of them are small. When I said small, the population is less than 20 million, and also the economies are less than $10 billion. So they're small. So what the head of state and government, African head of state and government, through different summit and decision did, they understood that the market is small. So therefore, in January 2012, they have decided to create a one continental market, which is the Continental Free Trade Area, by an indicative date of 2017. And basically, they also decided to come up with an action plan for boosting intra-African trade. How do we increase our trade, among ourselves? Now we're standing, at 11%, but obviously, we also have to account for the informal sector, which is not accounted for now. This boosting intra-African trade has 7 different clusters, which address exactly the challenges that cited: trade facilitation, productive capacity, trade-related infrastructure, the market factor, the trade information, the finance, and so forth. So it's 7 different clusters exactly addressing the issue of SMEs. Our head of state also decided that infrastructure is very important, and in order to reduce the cost of transaction, infrastructure also play a key role on this. So in July of 2010, they came with this new program for infrastructure development for Africa. And this actually covers several subject. One is the transport, energy, the transponder, water, and also the ITC. So we're also working with the ADB, we're working with the NEPAT agencies to ensure that to implement all this program. And lastly, I mean, obviously we have so many other frameworks that I don't have time to get into. We have the African Mining Vision to manage the natural resources of Africa, the Accelerated Industrial Plan for Africa, the CADEP, which is, the agriculture program and so forth. But last year, once we celebrated 50 years of the AU, our head of state and government has reviewed what have we achieved on 50 years. One thing that we have achieved is the, our struggle through liberalization, the apartheid, and so forth. But now our focus for the next 50 years is really the economic, is the creation of jobs. And therefore, we imagine the Africa that we want in 2063. That's why we call it 2063, because it's 50 years from 2013. And actually, this framework that we have prepared and adopted by head of state has benefited from a lot of stakeholder input from a lot of stakeholders, women, youth, historian, you name it, basically the diaspora and everybody else. Now, what is so different? Why you will say that, okay, our head of state thought about all of this framework to address our challenges, but why are we here today? And I think that we're not lacking any framework, we're not lacking decision, however, we're lacking implementation. And I think that it's very important to underscore that since 2012, actually October 2012, and as women know, women deliver because we do understand the issues. Our chairperson of the African Union, Dr. Lamine Zuma, took the leadership of the African Union Commission and very particular about implementation. Now she has actually a committee of Minister of Foreign Affairs, 10 of them, plus all the Secretary General of the RECs, which are the building block for the African Union, to come and reflect on how we move forward, on how do we address the challenges. And this is done actually before every summit, which is every 6 months. And in order to focus, we decided, actually that group of Minister of Foreign Affairs, that the regional economic communities, the ECA is part of it, the ADB is also part of it, and basically that input goes to the head of state and government, have 5 different flagship projects that we really need to measure, discuss, and then we get directive for the next 6 months. One of them is really how do we come with a forum, an African forum, whereby head of state will meet all of the business people, having this dialogue, just like the World Economic Forum, understand the issues and how to make sure that they come and create that conducive environment that actually is required for SME to succeed. So this is actually in a good shape. The concept note has been developed. There is in discussion, and this is something that actually we're going to take forward. The second thing that we are doing, as you're aware, youth are in the center of everything. They constitute, youth and women constitute more than 50% of our population. And therefore, we have to give them the skill required to make sure that, first of all, they stay in Africa, and secondly, they can produce in Africa. They can transform our economies. So basically, we need to give them the necessary skill, whether vocational training, higher education, and so forth, and to ensure that also our people are not dying on the seas, such as the Lampedusa issue. And therefore, our most important capital is our people, and we need to invest on them. If we invest rightly in our people, I think it will be an asset for the African continent and for the rest of the world. That's the second thing that actually we're working on and reviewing, analyzing the skill gap that is required. What do we need to do? How do we further that? That's the second thing. The third thing is we have a commodity strategy. We have decided that, we're exporting raw materials. And we cannot succeed by exporting raw material. We need to transform our economy. We need to create the job that we require. We need to create sustainable job. In order for us to do that, we need to put the emphasis on value addition, on a value chain. And we think that by coming up with a commodity strategy that address infrastructure such as, the oil, that address also the mining, that address also agriculture, where we have comparative advantage, we will be able to shift our comparative advantage to a competitive advantage. So this is also something that is very important, very key to our chairperson, and the next meeting will be in December to review again this commodity. The next thing that we're talking about is connecting Africa. We talked about, infrastructure for Africa, but actually we have this project now whereby we're thinking, let's connect Africa via speed train. Let's connect our capital. But obviously when you connect our capitals, and even if you have a speed train, if you have to stop at every single border to get a visa, or you have to stop for non-trade barrier for so long, actually it's a waste of time because it's not necessary anymore. And therefore, when we talk about connecting Africa, we have to ensure that also this requirement of visa, this non-trade barrier are eliminated. Also our production is good, that we can also move on the train, finish good, not just commodities. So it's very important, and that's why actually we encourage the EAC. You heard this morning the president talking about no more visas. You heard the minister now talking about NTBs, no more NTBs. ECOWAS has done the same, and as I said, they're the building block, and we also are working with the other regional economic communities to ensure that this visa requirement is eliminated. We're moving forward so that we can come up with this, good project. The last thing is I spoke about the Continental Free Trade Area. However, after 2013, we have decided that we need to fast-track the Continental Free Trade Area. We have a roadmap that was adopted by our head of state in 2012. But we have said, let's look at this roadmap. The willing is there. All our head of state decided that we have to have a Continental Free Trade Area. But now let's have the coalition of the champion. I don't want to call it coalition of the willing because the willing is there. So, we can have just few countries that can come and form a free trade area, and then the other will join when they're ready. I think that no country in the world, we have 54 countries, even with the experience of the EU, with 27 countries, it was not easy. 54 is doubling. So I think that once we have champion, the other one will join. And I want to also say that for us on the Continental Free Trade Area, negotiating the right rule of origin that really will favor regional integration, value chain, and therefore will lead us to this made in Africa. This is something that I think that we want, and that's why I'm very interested to hear the next,
Helen Hyde.
Right, Ellen Hyde, about this. I'm sorry, thank you very much. About this made in Africa. I think that this is very important. So this is actually what we are doing. We're reviewing it and then making sure that, we get the adjustment required. We get the leadership to tell us what to do so we can move forward. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much indeed. And I have to say, I'm a little bit concerned with the last sentence. You said so many good things, and then you said, we wait for the leadership to tell us what to do. And I think this is one of our challenges that we have, isn't it? Because in the end, you can set up these plans, set up these roadmaps and so on and so forth, but if the will isn't there, if they don't do those things that you plan, these young people are not going to wait 50 years. 2063 is lovely, we can see it in the horizon, but they want to get things done today. So we'll unpack that a little bit further. So I think fasten your seatbelt. It's coming. All right. Our next speaker, and I'd like to ask Your Excellency Ambassador Soni. India has gone through a journey, and I think a lot of our developing nations on the continent have started and are on. We talk about these value chains, and typically we kind of enter these value chains at the bottom of the tier. And the challenge is, how do we get up, get in, and then start working our way up that value chain? What lessons can you share with us about your experiences that you've seen in India and other parts of the world that you may have observed, where these SMEs can get in and start climbing that value chain to create this potential that's there?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Actually, I'm daunted because the panelists are so eminently qualified persons.
I do not know what qualification I can possibly have, because on the flank there are two people who are real good entrepreneurs, who really know the marketplace better than anybody else. The minister has set the tone. He is the one who sets the tone. And we have two other from the various institutions. Where do I fit in? Let me clarify that today, even though my title says Ambassador V.B. Soni, I'm not talking as an ambassador of India. But I have had experience of working in the diplomatic service for India for 35 years, and bulk of it was spent on promoting India's trade and what India is all about. And today I'm going to talk about it. Since you have asked me, I would say a comparatively easy question for a start. I'm sure there will be many more questions which will be, to me, which will be difficult. But before I start that, let me please bring you back to 20 years. Rwanda is the place which was in the news for wrong reasons exactly 20 years back. And today, Rwanda is celebrating 20th years of that genocide which happened. Totally unnecessary, totally uncalled for, and totally unjustified. But the country has come up. So please bear a thought for those innocent people who were slaughtered for no rhyme or reason just because they happen to have a different belief. So that is the way I will start, because I cannot start until and unless I pay respect to those people. But what is important, what I find very, very encouraging is this setback which Rwanda was thrown back has not stopped it from coming forward. And 20 years is a relatively short time in any country's history. But in that short time, how you have come up is something amazing. And I think the credit has to go to the leadership, particularly President Paul Kagame. Let me also share your experience with India. I mean, what they have achieved in 20 years, India has not been able to achieve in the last 67 years of our service, of our independence. We became independent in 1947. But if you were to see the journey of India during those 67 years, very interesting journey. We were essentially we were colonized for a long, long time, 200 years. And we were not allowed to be anything more than an agricultural country. So there was no infrastructure in place. There was infrastructure like railways, which was needed by the colonial power to transport goods and people, etc. But there was no infrastructure as such in the ground root level. So the immediate job for the government at that particular time was to build the infrastructure. And the infrastructure had to be big, huge. So the 5-year plan, the called Soviet model, was adopted, by which we set up plans for production of cement, we set up plans for steel, for telecommunications, for roads, bridges, and stuff like that. All that required huge investment. Where was the investment going to come from? So that is what only government could take over the job. So the private sector didn't have the opportunity to do that at that particular time. So one of the casualties, therefore, was the small-scale industry and small-scale enterprises. And India took a jump. If you were to see after the independence, we straight away went into the services sector. We went into IT sector and services sector, which is IPOs, etc. That is what we did. But we left behind a bit of our SME sector. But at the same time, the bulk of the feeder agencies come from the SME sector. So as the economy was opening up, the opportunities came their way. So SMEs, therefore, today account for 100 million people are employed in the SME sector. 38% of India's exports are provided by the SME sector. 40 million entrepreneurs, small-scale entrepreneurs, are actually involved in that kind of an activity. Over the period, therefore, they have developed. Now the emphasis is changing. If you have followed the new leadership which has come into India in the last elections in May, and the biggest message the Prime Minister gave, that Mr. Modi, was that we should now go for manufacturing sector. China has taken a march over us because they have given adequate emphasis on that. And so the main emphasis will be manufacturing sector. With the manufacturing sector, the SMEs will get a push because manufacturing sector has to be given support by the SMEs. Reason being, take the case, the classic case in India is that of automobile ancillaries. India's automobile industry is increasing at a rate you cannot imagine. The number of cars which are coming on the roads is amazing because the Indian economy, which was rising, which was increasing at the rate of 9%, now it has come down to half of that. But at the same time, opening the markets has helped that. And so you find that in various sectors, SMEs are coming up. SMEs are also diversified. They are not really located at the big cities. They are throughout the length and breadth of country. More importantly, the investment that is required for the small scale industries are much, much smaller. An average person can do it. And this is what is this success to my mind. It has not been acknowledged in India so far, that they have a fantastic contribution they have made, and they will continue to make now. But to come back to your question, what exactly it is that India can give, or African countries can learn from the Indian experience. First of all, it is not an organized sector in that sense. They cannot market themselves properly. Please mark these words. Marketing is not there. They do not know how to design, because they can produce an item, but somebody has to tell them what are the latest things, requirement of the market. So until and unless you meet those requirements, it's not going to help. Raw material availability. They do not know where to get the raw material from what. And the two other things which are very important to learn is packaging. How do you package? A lot of items which are produced and sent, not properly packaged, can break up. And so that's why you really can't do. How do you provide them facilities for transportation? Because they must be tied up with various agencies. It could be the trucks, it could be the goods train, etc. That is where I think India has been following these developments. Along with them, more importantly also, they do not know how to get the maximum money for their effort which they put in. I cannot talk about Africa, but in India, the problem is there are so many intermediary agencies, there are so many so-called agents which are doing, and they are the ones who pocket, they manipulate the markets in such a manner that the producer doesn't get a fair deal, the end product user gets it very expensive, the money is made by the middleman. So to what extent you can bridge the gap between the two is what is important. See, right now, again, let me also tell you what is happening is the entry of various MNCs in the retail sector, multi-sector retail sector. Previously, what was happening, it was total manipulation. But now the government is saying, why should we not allow MNCs to come from outside, maybe Walmart? Because they will go and give the fair return, and they will eliminate the wastage and other things that go into it. It is, when you talk about small sector marketing, please remember one more very important sector, food packaging. It is a small sector. It's a food packaging is very important, and I think it pains my heart when I see in Africa you're producing some of the best fruits because it's an organic material which you get. There are not much fertilizers that go into it. It's an excellent thing, and yet not exploited properly. You are producing so much, wasted, thrown by the wayside. It's a terrible waste. All it requires is just to learn the small techniques of packaging, first processing, which is it's a so simple thing, you'll be amazed, but it is not being done. I would suggest that all the farming sector, and I think one of the, in the morning, the one mentioned was also made was about the food security. Maybe you also mentioned that the food must not be wasted. And so, go to the sector, which is SME sector. What can be done to them also? They need, now I talk to you as member of the Confederation of Indian Industry, the chambers. Chambers have a very important role. I think first of all, to train those people, they must have workshop at various places, not just in the central city, because all the regional chambers, they have their regional branches. They must go to the regions, try to make a workshop to them, explain to them situation on all the issues that I have mentioned. So if that can be done, that will be good, but more interaction. It's important. What can India do? Another important thing which is going to happen toward the end of the year is the India-Africa Forum Summit. This was started in 2009, and next one was 2008 and 2011, now 2014. So this is an excellent forum for the two sides to get together, which areas we should concentrate on. And India is coming not with the purpose of seeking mines or denuding you of your resources or to make windfall profit. No, India certainly is coming here, but of course we are not in the charity business. There has to be some money to be made out, but with three things in mind. In the process, we should help in the skill development, capacity building, and transfer of appropriate technologies. These are the three things which Indian companies will do as and when they come. My own company, the Overseas Infrastructure Alliance, we are doing exactly that. What we are also doing is the corporate social responsibility. Indian companies who are coming, they must plow back whatever they are doing for the welfare and benefit. And since the Ethiopian lady is here, let me tell you that in Ethiopia we have opened eye hospital. It's a free hospital which we have given small operations for cataract, because Ethiopia is on a height, so lack of oxygen, operation cataract. We have built that, we have given it to the local people, they will be able to take forward. So these are the things India can do at the summit which is going to come up in December. We can give ideas, you can give ideas. In fact, the AU is the one which will be the coordinating agency, the regional economic groupings are the ones who will be doing it. Please send the message across, since the AU people are here, that please bring give high priority to taking India's experience and cooperation. We also train a lot of people. We have what is called the ITEC, Indian Technical Economic Cooperation Program, under which at least 2,000 students, not students, but actually people go for training at free. No cost is borne by Government of India. They are all in technical fields, in about 100 different fields. Please send the maximum number of people from the MSME sector. They will be trained for 3 months, 4 months. We are going to give you all the facilities. Come back, you will be also replicating the same experience. Let me also tell you that India is setting up 20 research institutes. We are also setting up the Foreign Trade Institute. We are setting up the Diamond Institute. We are setting up the Foreign Trade Institute, etc. So there are so many things which India will be willing to help. Also in the IT sector, since mention was made of that. I can go on, but for now, I think you will permit me to say, I'm not trying to gloat, but thank you.
Can you hear me? All right, thank you very much indeed. I can see why you were an ambassador, because you're very good at selling your country. But thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your experiences with us, and I think there's a lot of lessons that we can learn definitely there. We'll unpack some of those a bit further as the conversation proceeds. I'm mindful of time, so I'm going to ask our last two speakers just to speed up a tad, and then let's just see what's on the minds. What have you stirred? Because I think we've been stirring the pot quite a bit, and I can see a lot of people itching to share their thoughts with you. So let me ask Director Annabel Gonzalez to wear two hats. One as a former trade minister and the other as a senior director at the World Bank. So you've seen action from different sides, wearing different hats. And I'm just wondering, I guess we've learned a little bit about what role government can play, policymakers can play in creating an enabling environment. What about institutions such as the World Bank? We've talked about finance, access to capital, etc., etc. How can you be part of this SMME revolution, internationalization of SMEs and this diversification process? How can you be part of this story?
Well, thank you very much. First of all, let me say that I'd like to start by congratulating ITC for its 50th anniversary. That is quite an impressive age. I know that because I turned 50 myself last year. So I know that this is an important age. Also, I'd like to congratulate the government of Rwanda for all the good things that you are doing, Minister, you and your colleagues, and for putting Rwanda on the map, and the two of you for organizing this great event and for bringing us together to discuss all these very important topics. First, a word on the global practice on trade and competitiveness at the Global Bank that I lead since the past 2 months. This practice is basically or aims at supporting the development of dynamic and resilient economies, to supporting connecting to markets and enabling private initiative to achieve what are the World Bank's twin goals, which are eliminating poverty and boosting shared prosperity. And of course, small and medium-sized enterprises play a very important role in achieving this goal. So it is a very important part of the work that we do, supporting small and medium-sized enterprises to enhance their competitiveness and to connect to global markets. Now, I'd like to say that there are 3 very important things when thinking about how do you connect a small and medium-sized enterprise in a country like Rwanda, for example, to the global market. First and foremost, I think it's very important to have a sound business environment, one that is conducive to the creation of small and medium-sized enterprises, to their growth, and to their internationalization. And this includes, of course, a sound and legal framework, such as the one that Rwanda has been putting in place for all of these years, a stable financial sector, access to power, transparent public sector, moderate taxes, and others. Now, if firms are to export in particular, a very key element is to reduce the time and cost of moving goods across borders. We have heard a lot about that from both Minister Kanimba and Commissioner of the AU, because this is a burden that is particularly heavy for developing countries and whose impact disproportionately affects small and medium-sized enterprises. Here, I would also like to say a word about the role of regional integration in expanding markets and opening opportunities for small and medium-sized firms. And I think that a lot of what is happening in this continent is very exciting in terms of fostering regional integration. Now, a good business framework is very important, but it's normally not enough. In most developing countries, small and medium-sized enterprises tend to face structural challenges which impact both their development and their participation in international markets. This normally includes access to capital, access to managerial skills and to technology, which in turn, of course, affects productivity. So addressing these constraints through targeted government programs with the support of international organizations is key, among others, to expand the pool of potential exporters. You want to have a large number of SMEs in a country in order to build a good group of exporting SMEs. Now, the impacts of these programs, according to the studies of the World Bank, can be maximized if they are strategically focused on building a sustainable ecosystem for the desired service. Now, in the case of international markets, SMEs also face information asymmetries as regards consumer preferences, potential buyers, potential competitors, transportation, logistical issues, standards, and others, including sometimes cultural issues. So addressing these barriers is essential to raise the internationalization rate of SMEs. Now, a very key instrument for doing this are export promotion agencies. And there are many successful examples of export promotion agencies around the world. Services may include the traditional country image building, export support services, marketing, and market research and publications. Support, again, from international organizations, such as the one, for instance, granted by the ITC, in putting in place and strengthening these agencies is quite relevant. Again, World Bank studies show that for every dollar invested in an export promotion agency, you can create up to $100 in exports in different parts of the world. So this is a very good investment from the perspective of a country. Now, SMEs may also internationalize by connecting to larger enterprises as suppliers of multinational companies in the context of global value chains or regional value chains. In this case, the challenges associated with SMEs development are normally compounded by the need for SMEs to make financial investments to upgrade productive capabilities without necessarily an assured contract from the multinational company, which typically requires certainty that the SME will be able to meet certification standards, including quality standards, delivery times, potential increases in demand, and others. So here is where programs aimed at supporting the development of linkages between multinational enterprises and small and medium-sized firms working closely with industry and other international organizations are also quite relevant. Now, these interventions may range from identifying SMEs with good potential to connect with the multinationals, but also supporting these companies in developing their core capabilities through, among others, access to international certifications and finance. Now, strengthening links between multinational enterprises and small and medium-sized firms is not only important from the perspective of internationalization of SMEs and associated benefits, but also for fostering stronger ties between the multinationals and the country, further enriching the value proposition of countries. Let me conclude by saying that the World Bank Group, and in particular the Global Practice on Trade and Competitiveness, is ready to assist countries to enhance their framework conditions, improving their business climate. Again, it will be difficult, I must confess, to reach the level that Rwanda has reached, because it is a very impressive level. But nevertheless, to say, for instance, that we were in Kenya just yesterday, meeting with the Ministry of Industry and discussing the establishment of a doing business implementation unit in the Ministry of Industry in Kenya. These are the types of things that we can do. We can also strengthen or help strengthen SME competitiveness, and we have many interesting programs in this regards. For example, we have an interesting program in India, strengthening the managerial capabilities of managers in small and medium-sized enterprises in the auto industry so that they can connect with the large Indian companies that are so successful in this area. Similar program, for instance, in Colombia. And finally, we can also support integration into the global economy, including, for example, through programs that will support SME understanding international standards and meeting international standards. We are doing this, for example, in Honduras, in the agribusiness sector. We do this through analysis and advisory services. We can also do it through lending. And we can also do it through a strong implementation support that we can give on the ground with a number of good officers that are sitting in many countries, including here in Africa. And finally, I'd like to say that we also partner, and we'd like to partner with other international organizations, again, like ITC, to further strengthen the work that we do and the impact that all of these international organizations can have in supporting countries, and in particular in making their small and medium-sized enterprises important actors in the global economy. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much indeed. Growing their businesses, so you're the result of what can happen, the potential that's there, because what we'd like to do is duplicate your efforts and make that happen right across the continent. I'm going to start with you, Ashish. Your group, the business story, I think many people here may already know it, but what they might not know is the foundation and the impact that it has with, I believe, 140,000 African entrepreneurs and SMEs. And I'm just wondering, how is it that we can help the entrepreneur? Because you know what it's like. You, more than anyone, knows how hard it is to be an entrepreneur on this continent. So what sort of interventions and help government can create an enabling environment, these institutions can guide, but what do the guys on the street really need?
Thank you, Peter. It's great to be back in Rwanda. I'd like to thank the Rwanda Development Board and the ITC and the government of Rwanda for hosting us. I think this is a topic very close to my heart. Starting at the age of 15 with very little capital, no ability to network, I understand what it's like being a young entrepreneur on our continent. And I think it's truly about enabling, empowering, and inspiring. When you think about it, majority of our population, almost 75 to 80% of our population is under the age of 35, right? Then you've got women entrepreneurs on top of that. We've got a very young demographic. A lot of our youth, their parents are either civil servants or they're farmers. Who do they turn to for advice, for entrepreneurial advice? They can't walk up to people on the street and try and get it. Our education systems don't provide it. So how do they truly go about this? And we set up the Mara Foundation 5 years ago with this exact mission. When I set it up 5 years ago, I made a very arrogant statement, which has cost me dearly, which is that my dream is to see a self-sustainable Africa, and therefore I want to run a self-sustainable foundation, and therefore we don't take any grants or third-party capital. So the foundation is fully funded by ourselves. It sounded great when we said it. It's been a painful process, but it's been well worth it purely because nobody else's agenda is a part of this apart from true impact. And what we do is we create mentorship programs. We created an offline mentorship program. We took it online. And now we've launched it on mobile as well. So it works on smartphones and dumb phones from, iPhones and Androids and Nokias and Blackberries. Young entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs can download this app. It's called Mara Mentor. It's on all the app stores. They have the ability, it's free to download. They use it, they get guidance, advice, hand-holding, support, training, competitions. They get the ability to talk to global mentors. They get the ability to talk to mentors across the continent. They have the ability to talk to mentees, their fellow peer group members across the continent. So an entrepreneur in Nigeria can share ideas with an entrepreneur in Rwanda, with an entrepreneur in Zambia, Ethiopia, etc., and share ideas, get the best practices, even do things together. So this is a very powerful platform, and it's absolutely free. It's free to download, free to use, and no sponsorship or advertisement or banners. There's no Coca-Cola banner that pops up when you open it up or anything. But I think the key thing is, the way we do it is we partner with governments. We've launched it with many heads of state across the continent. President Obama announced it as a partner in the Young Africa Leaders Initiative at the US-Africa Summit as well. So it's an initiative which it's also being launched, actually. It's nice to see that the UN is launching it in 80 countries globally. So it's normally we see global initiatives coming to Africa. This is an African initiative going global, which is nice to see. I think the important thing is that, access to capital, access to advice is crucial, and therefore we're setting up venture capital funds, etc., down the line as well. And I think what the minister touched on, what Rwanda's doing is great. I think public policy is a crucial part of this. And I think, Rwanda, as you said, is probably the best child in the pack. But, I think it's a matter of creating enabling environments from, I sit on the Global Agenda Council for the World Economic Forum on Africa. And we're trying to come up with startup laws that can benefit. South Africa is a great example where 65% of private sector employment is created through SMEs, yet 4 out of 5 SMEs fail. And the reason for that is, a startup has the same labor law that a big mining company has, right? There's little issues that we need to fix, and these startup policies do make a difference. I think the 2063 plan is fantastic that the AU has done. The youth on the continent, and as a young African, I can say that we have become a lot more patient. We're trying to be more patient, but we're not that patient. I think by the time a speed train comes, we'll have drones flying around, we'll have low-cost areas, we'll have so much more. What we need now is we need to be able to move around our continent. It is easier being a British citizen or an American citizen traveling around our continent than it is an African citizen. And that needs to change. At the Abuja meeting of the World Economic Forum, we signed a migration pact as a Global Agenda Council. Some heads of state signed, including President Kagame, President Kenyatta, and a few others. What we need the AU to do is help us name and shame and create reciprocation from other countries. We need all of the countries to sign up to this. So policy-wise, it's a very, very important element for us. And that's going to help export, that's going to help trade, that's going to help inter-Africa trade, etc. If we can't move around and talk to each other, it's not going to happen. And lastly, I think it's about changing the narrative. I said this at the US-Africa Summit. You know, we hear about people wanting to bring Silicon Valley to Africa and create a Silicon Savannah and do all of this fancy stuff. It's great. I think it's fantastic. I think it's more real estate that they want to sell more than anything. But I think what we need to do is be very practical, that let us take Africa to Silicon Valley. How do we create innovation here on our continent and take it globally, right? Something like Twitter is worth $31 billion and loses money and gives you only 140 characters to send a message on, and they're worth $31 billion. I mean, why can we not come up with innovative stuff? We have 1 billion people on the continent. We have the user base, we have the innovation, we have the mindset, we have fantastic leadership. It's ours to mess up.
Great, wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, Ashish. And I'm always in a completely different way. And this is a kind of vision I think that we need to embrace going forward. So thank you very much indeed for sharing your thoughts with us. Helen, hi. Yours is an interesting story. And you've come to Africa and you saw opportunities here that perhaps a lot of people didn't see. And I'm just wondering what it is that you saw that we could have foreseen ourselves on this continent. Shoe factory in Ethiopia. Why there? What did you see? And what lessons can we learn across the continent from some of the things that you were able to identify, which is obviously a lot of potential that we have, but perhaps we're just not embracing as fully and as completely as we can?
Thank you very much for the question. First of all, actually, we didn't pick up Ethiopia. We didn't pick up Africa. It was Ethiopia who picked us. The story started in March 2011 when the late Prime Minister Meles had a meeting with Justin Lin, the chief economics of World Bank, and asked for his opinion in terms of poverty reduction and economic transformation. Justin told him 3 things. Number 1, job creation and export generation, it is the key. Secondly, the fundamental secret for the Asia for Tigers in the 60s and China in the 80s, we were able to have jump start in the economic growth because we tap into the global value chain through the window of opportunity in industry relocation, and that created millions of jobs, and that helped the economy really transform. Therefore, he gave the remedy to the late Prime Minister, which is to create a quick success in the continent, which is give inspiration, confidence, and learn from the experience to unlock actually the potentials of Ethiopia going into global chain. And that's actually the late Prime Minister took the advice. 6 months later, he went to China. He found us and invited us to Ethiopia. We put our feet in Ethiopia October 2011, and we made the decision to invest. From that decision to actual production to export, it took us only 3 months. And in the following 6 months, we doubled the export revenue in Ethiopia for the shoe sector. And then by month 12, I recruited 2,000 local workers, and by month 12, I recruited 4,000 local workers. Prior the success of the story, actually, Ethiopia also have an industrial zone called Eastern Industrial Zone. They struggled for 5 years to attract manufacture to export for the globe. But then after the success of the shoe story, despite actually Ethiopia in World Bank doing business dropped from 136 to 138, but then last year when the government built its first own industrial zone in Addis called Bole Lamin, with less than 3 months, 22 factory units, without any advertisement, it all listed out to international manufacturers from India, Bangladesh, Turkey, China, and this is the impact of the success it's bringing. And the first thing I want to say, actually, it was leadership and vision who brought us to the continent. And mentioning this, I don't think Ethiopia is alone in this case, and I want to highlight our experience in Rwanda. First of all, the president is definitely committed, understanding the job creation. It is the fundamental for the economy. And then actually at the minister level, we have Minister Francis and also CEO Franchas. They were willing to meet me 7 o'clock in their office, in order to understand how to attract investment. For investors, if you have a minister willing to go up to the office early than the cleaner, then that's the hope of this country. And then it was also in this hotel a few months ago, I had a dinner with Madam Claire. And then after the dinner, I insisted to pay for the bill. You know what Claire told me? Claire said, Helen, I don't want you to give me fish. I want you to teach me how to fish. I can pay for the dinner, but I want you to bring the manufacturing know-how to my country. So the question actually then, talking about despite the leadership, then the question is this sustainable? I mean, the manufacturing in Africa. And I think the answer is yes, because after 2 years, solid operational experience, my humble view is definitely yes. Why? Because I think private sector, SMEs, didn't come to Africa to do aid. They come to Africa to do business. But through business, they achieved development goals. So we have to understand what's the business, whether they exist for SMEs. Then I would suggest we look at the value chain. And then there are 3 players in the value chain. There's manufacturers, there's traders, and there's retailers. What's the business reason for them? Let me first start with the manufacturers. For example, the manufacturer we used to run in Ethiopia, the labor cost for labor-intensive manufacturing in China is about 22% of its overall cost. Today, with the rising labor cost, each labor costs $500 in China. In Ethiopia, each labor is $50. That's the starting salary. But in the past, salary is only one component. Another thing is the efficiency. That plays a big role. There is the myth, Africa, there's a low efficiency. But the thing I want to share with you, before I come to Ethiopia, I talked to the local manufacturers. They told me the day you give the salary to the workers, the day 1/3 of them will disappear. 15 days after they spend all the money, they came back to the factory again. China will face exactly the same problem 30 years back. This is typical lack of training and discipline. So what we did when we set up the factory, we recruited 86 Ethiopian university graduates. We fly to them to China to teach them how to make shoes. And then after 1 year's training, I can tell you, they learn as fast as Chinese. There's nothing wrong with the people. It's all about the capability of training. And we achieved 70% of the efficiency compared with China. So that allows us actually reduce from 22% labor cost, direct labor cost, down to 3%, which gives us 19% saving. In the past, people always argue there's logistic issues, Africa is not ready, but then let's look at the figures. In Ethiopia, I was exporting 12 containers every month to the US. In order to do that, I have to import 8 containers of raw material from China. But the cost in China, my logistic cost is 2%. But in Ethiopia, I have to pay 4 times more. But then that gives me 8%. But if you look at the absolute value, there's only 6% more. The 19% you saved minus the 6% more, there's still 13% saving. And that's the business reason for the manufacturing coming to Africa. So this is the first part, of the business reason. But this is only 1/3 of the jigsaw. Second is the retailers. Currently, the international order are still owned in the hands of European and US traders. There have to be a business reason for them. Under AGOA and Everything Now Times, they can save up to 37.5% saving in consumer goods. And that is very simple. Today, they go to China, go to a manufacturer and say, give me a discount. The Chinese factory will be saying, bye-bye. They will never see them again. But then just bringing the orders to Africa, they immediately have 30% saving just under the treaty. So this is the incentive for them. But most importantly, we have to also to looking at the change of the retailer market. The European retailers, they used to have the purchasing strategy, what they call 20-80. That means they purchase 80% from Far East and 20% around home country. But after the financial crisis, They were not able to sell because the global purchasing has been significantly reduced. The shelf time of the goods normally 6 weeks. They have huge containers reach the port of Europe. That's why we're seeing European retailers in the past few years, they have to discount everything for £1, €1. But this makes them to rethink, I cannot do this 20/80 purchasing strategy anymore. I need to find a new market. A lot of them change it to 40/60. And that's why we're seeing actually the order has already been reduced. And that's why we're seeing like in Ethiopia, Tesco, H&M, the big retailer, they desperate want to place in the orders in Africa. So I think among those, the Made in Africa initiative, we believe in the market is ready. And we think the global market, it is the key. Why? Because Africa, the total GDP today is still less than 2% of the global GDP. The US and Europe has all more than 20% GDP. You can only tap into global market if in the next 5 years, if you really want to grow your economy. So that's number one, we believe the global market. Secondly, we believe the Asian manufacturing know-how. Because in the last time of industrialization relocation, that know-how has already been transferred to Asia. We have to actually attract the people to bring their know-how to Africa. And the third part is to find the Africa comparative advantage. For the case of Ethiopia, that is certainly competitive labor and also the advantage of the utility price. But places also like Rwanda, they don't have such a kind of advantage. So the strategy we realize in here basically, in terms of the value, we were focusing on light manufacturing, which reducing the transaction cost. And then we're also looking at value added, which we are targeting for the middle and higher brand, but starting with their basic product. We are creating the green manufacturing, environmental friendly concept of manufacturing, and also we link with the CSR program with the global big retailer. So different country has its own different comparative advantage. In my generation, I have to say, I benefited, the dramatic change in China in the past 30 years. And I really believe, the young people in Africa, they are going to benefit the changes in Africa in the next 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much indeed. It's just a...
Thank you very much for this question. Actually, I think the answer is even very simple. And in my first intervention, actually, you have the answer. EU have this ambition of building a continental free area. At the East African community, we have similar objective of doing the same thing at regional level. And over time, we've taken decisions, but implementation has been very slow until very recently. When President Kagame, President Museveni, and President Kenyatta sit together and agree to change things. And in less than 6 months, when you see the things you have been implementing, for example, removing the visa, allowing a citizen to travel simply using the ID card, setting up one tourism visa for all the countries in the region, removing all the non-tariff barriers along the corridors. It's a question of will and leadership. And in my view, what I'm seeing is that other African leaders are excited about what is happening here. And don't be surprised that in a very short period of time, this experience in this region may spread out. And I think AU probably has a very nice opportunity to come on board and use this experience to see what can be achieved very quickly to build this global free trade area in a very short period of time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we are hopeful, and we're we look to you, and I think you've given us a good example of what is possible, particularly in East Africa. And let's just hope that it does incentivize the other leadership in the other 54, 56 countries. All right, Ashish, I'm going to ask you to do the last word, actually, because at the end of the day, we're business people here, and there are a lot of young people who just want to get it going. And I'm just wondering, what would you have liked to have been told at a certain point in your life that you can leave as best advice for young business people here to really get into this MME thing and succeed?
Thank you, Pierre. I think President Kagame summarized it so well this morning. I think believing in yourself is so crucial. Entrepreneurship isn't easy, right? And anybody tells you it's easy, they're lying to you, right? You're gonna fall down, you're gonna collapse, you have to get up, you have to dust yourself off, you have to get back to it. And I think it's very important to have the right ethics, the right values, because that's gonna be crucial in a long-term thing. I think, frankly, early on, 18 years ago when I began, I wish I studied more global case studies, African case studies of how other businesses and how other entrepreneurs did it. Rather than trying to reinvent the wheel, rather than going through my own challenges and obstacles, it would have been great to have that access to understanding other people's stories. And I think we have to be different. We have to think big, we have to dream, but we have to start small. And you know, it begins somewhere. And I always say to young entrepreneurs particularly, and startups in particular, that don't get caught in this rat race. You know, there's a whole rat race out there that this person's doing this, I need to do more, and I need to do this. And don't get caught in that rat race, because frankly, even if you win, you're still going to be a rat, right? So I think it's very, very important to stay to your own path, stay to your own vision, and make it happen. I think we are so lucky. As young Africans, we're so lucky that in the 18 years I've been active on the continent, I have never seen so much global excitement around Africa that I see today. I have never seen this. We set up a bank, Bob Diamond and I, Atlas Mara. We've raised $1 billion of capital in 8 months, and 90% of that capital came from the United States. And majority of that capital came from capital that's never invested in Africa before. That wouldn't have happened 3 years ago. This is now, and it's our turn.
So these are exciting times. Let's embrace them. You know, it's such a pity that we've run out of time, but parallel sessions that are following, and just unpack them in greater detail, because I think they've painted a picture for us, a broad picture. You know, right from the beginning, it's reforms, interventions, government policy, creating an enabling environment, and using technologies that really can be a game changer. We heard that we need to produce quality products, quality goods. We have a window. The commissioner said 50 years, but I reckon it's more like 5. To really do the implementation. Because that really is, I think, the big story here, is we've talked about it, we know what to do, but we need to really now start implementing. And we've heard about educating our business people. They don't know what they don't know. They know how to do the making of whatever it is and selling, but perhaps they need help because they're not an organized sector. A lot of it comes from its informal kind of history. They don't know how to market themselves. Simple things for MBA grads like packaging, logistics, and so on and so forth. But perhaps we need to find ways to assist the SMEs to deal with those game-changing solutions. And yeah, the middleman syndrome, we know this story. They come under different guises and different names. From my part of the world, they're called dealers. And they just don't add value, but they're just stuck in the system, creating an unnecessary change. So we need to look at that. And the business chambers have a role that they need to play. Education continues to come through, training. Again, sound business environment, a stable financial sector, just some of the things that we talk about in terms of making sure that there's an enabling environment for SMEs to be able to do what they need to do to thrive. And it kept coming through again, you know, crossing borders, migration, movement. All of this is an unnecessary burden for the SMME. We just want him to be able to do what he does and get his product out there. So we need to make sure that it can move from border to border without time and cost implications in there. We heard about building pools of potential exporters, because with this pool, the bigger the chance we have of getting these exporters, these SMEs to grow to that level. Ashish, I loved hearing you speak. A lot of it almost sounded like a motivational speaker, but I think, as you said, the president said, it really is about dreaming and changing your mindset even before you go anywhere. And I think that was very, very important. And one line that I remember and I would like to use, and I'm going to pretend I said it, enabling, empowering, and inspiring, because that really is, I think, the crux of the matter, particularly at that level, because people need to believe. And if you inspire them, word of advice, mentor them, and also create an environment where people can mentor each other and share, then we'll start to make those strides that you're talking about. Helen, your story, I loved listening to the percentages, because in the end, really, if you do the math, the equations are quite simple. And you have to look at the whole story. It may cost you a lot to bring something from China, but you make the gains by planting the seeds in Africa. So thank you very much indeed for seeing those opportunities and perhaps giving us an opportunity to see the bigger picture and to start to talk about, as you said, what is our comparative advantage in our region, in our countries, in our communities? What can we do the best that, as Ashish says, that we can now send out into the globe? So thank you very much indeed for sharing those thoughts with us. So much seeds, so much thought. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together as we say thank you to Honourable Minister Francois Kanimba, Ms. Fatima Haram Assil, Ambassador Vidya Bushan-Soni, Ms. Annabelle Gonzalez, Mr. Ashish Taka, and Ms. Helen Hai. Thank you very, very much indeed for your, I think they've set a tone for us. So now it's up to you to go out there and convert these thoughts, generate your own ideas, and let's get the job done. No more chatting, talking, planning. Let's just get down to business and make things happen. All right, we've come to the end of this particular plenary. What we'd like to do is move on quite quickly because we're busy trying to make up time. And whilst I ask our next moderator to come up, can I just ask you to stand, stretch your arms. Oh, don't hit the person next to you. And when you feel like you've got your body back, just sit down again and put your hands together in the meantime for Sean Donnan, who's going to be taking us through our next plenary. Sean? Oh, stretch. Great. A big hand once again for our panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much indeed.